Welcome to this short introduction to the AR and Collections Manager for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. The Collections Manager is a specialized contact manager that is designed to aid users in identifying what needs to be done to clean up the accounts receivable for a company. Let's review some basic concepts that we're going to be utilizing in the various different training movies. First of all, we will refer to exceptions repeatedly. An exception is our terminology for any transaction that requires a user's attention. It might be an overdue invoice, it might be a partially paid invoice, it could be an unapplied payment or credit memo, it could be a lot of different things that generically we call exceptions. Exceptions are created when you run the generate and update exception routine. So generate and update does two major things and a bunch of minor things. So first, it examines the customer ledger entry table for any new transactions that meet the criteria in setup for inclusion in the exception list, which is the to-do list, and we'll talk about next. So we look for anything that is newly overdue from yesterday or the last time generate and update was run, which should be daily. Or if a payment was posted against something that's already in the exception list and the remaining balance drops to zero, generate an update will remove the exception from the list because it's been handled and will move it to archived history. The exception list is the to-do list. Generate and update exceptions populates the exception list and updates it every time that it's run. So the exception list is where the user is going to go to be able to decide what they're going to work on. Once they decide what they're going to work on, they'll move to the exception manager. The exception manager provides detail about an account. It will show all of the overdue invoices. It'll show things that are not yet due. It'll show payment history. It'll show a variety of functions that are in basic Business Central and are all collected in one screen. You can generate an aging report. You can jump over to the customer ledger entries to do an application. You can jump to the customer card. From the exception manager, you can move all around the accounts receivable world. The reason for going into the exception manager and familiarizing yourself with the contents is in order to be able to contact your customer and get guidance as to how the customer wants to proceed. Maybe it's about an unapplied payment. Maybe you didn't know what to do with the payment because it wasn't clear what it should be applied against. Maybe it's an overdue invoice and you're going to ask for payment. The contact event is a recording of what happened when you contacted the customer. You'll specify who you contacted, when you contacted them, what did you do, did you make a telephone call, did you send them a letter, did you leave a voicemail, send an email, whatever. You're going to record what they told you, and you're going to record a follow-up date. So the follow-up date is absolutely critical to the concept of the AR and Collections Manager. As you'll see, that's the primary sort order of the exception list is what do we need to contact next. Then we also have to talk about collections representatives. Collections reps are the people who are allowed to see all of this data from the exception list, the exception manager, and the contact event history. All of this is considered confidential information, and only people that are listed in the collections rep table will be allowed to see it. So, those are some of the basic concepts. We've set up a number of different movies. The first one is setting up the collections rep. Again, if a user is not in the collections rep list, they won't be able to see anything else. So that's the very first step to be able to use the collection system. Then we're going to go run a quick setup. This is not a place where we're going to go dive in depth into the various different fields and settings, but rather be able to get a user up and running in the AR and Collections Manager in 5 minutes. Then we're going to talk about running the generate and update exceptions routine so that when you first open the system, there will be no exceptions in the exception list and there won't be any payment class history and information. We'll talk about payment classes in another video. So that's one of the first things we have to do is run these functions in order to be able to get the data. The data then resides in the exception list, and we'll open up we'll then look at the exception list and how it can best be utilized to be able to select who you're going to work with. Once you've selected an account to work with, we'll look at the exception manager and all of the various different information that's available in the exception manager. Then we'll move on to another video. Once you've reviewed the history for the account, we want to record the contact event. And we want to be able to see information regarding previous contacts. Then we'll talk about some of the special functions in the AR and Collections Manager. Handling short paid invoices, handling invoices in dispute, dealing with credit limit, which is an option if you want to use it. And then we'll go back into detailed debt collection setup, which will make a lot more sense once you've seen all of the other functions. With all that being said, let's get going.